Welcome to We Articulate Podcast, where if you know, you know.
And if you don't, you need to ask somebody who does. One of your hosts, Miles.
And I'm Daniel. And I guess we're going to get into some topics today.
It's going to be great. Hey, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy late Thanksgiving, everybody.
Late Thanksgiving.
We're
correct.
fashionably late, as always.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you know, some people are not celebrating Thanksgiving anymore.
You know what? Colonization
Yeah,
is a white man's thing, and we totally cannot celebrate that.
Ever.
It's just disgusting. I mean, how could you? You're on stolen land eating dry turkey, is what I've been told.
Or ham. I prefer ham.
No matter what it is, it's dry.
Yeah, it's always going to be dry.
And that's what comes with colonization.
It's true.
And,
That's I got a buddy at work. His family is not. He doesn't see the point of it, but his wife is super liberal about it and says we're not celebrating it. We don't do that anymore because he stands up against the colonization and the
tyranny of the white man.
The horrible. And there were a lot of bad things that happened. I mean, I mean, that's just kind of history in general. A lot of bad things happen.
But when hasn't any nation stood upon what they would call conquered land or stolen territory? I mean, that is exactly what nations are built of, right?
I mean,
is conquest, and
especially of the past.
So I don't know.
I think every continent has engaged in some form of that.
There's no other way to gain territory besides
Correct.
Through some sort of violent takeover. I mean, it just is what it is.
It even happened here on this continent, North and South America. It's fairly well known that the tribes, I don't know if you call them, the civilizations of South America in particular, were very...
Yeah,
they were very violent in their takeover of other territories.
Yeah, the Native Americans of the territories were violent by nature. I mean, it's just what is for humanity. I mean, humanity is a violent, animalistic sort of grouping.
So, I mean, if we're going, the things that happened in the past are a big no-nos, right? So, at what point do you start hating on Volkswagen for being produced by...
Well, I got to say that the funniest thing, right, is everybody gets mad about, the founding of America and slavery.
Horrible.
But
at
no point in time does anybody talk about these Fortune 500 companies that were built upon the backs of slavery, right?
Oh.
Do some research. Do some research on these Fortune 500 companies. Things like Capital One. I think it was Capital One. I know Bank of America. I mean, there's a lot of these massive financial corporations and just some of the other larger 500 companies were built on slavery. I mean, but you don't hear any backlash on them. You don't hear people screaming about how they need to defund or protest them or boycott their services.
How about a modern day of Nike using the Chinese system?
You can't talk about Nike like that, though. I mean, Colin Kaepernick would be so upset with you even bringing that up. I mean, according to him, the NFL is slavery, so...
He's very pro-Nike, isn't he? Also,
well, yeah, but the man that wants to play football, who wants to sit there and claim that the football is slavery...
Yeah, 100%. Isn't that ironic?
You really can't listen to anything that comes out of his mouth, because obviously he is dubiously compromised.
Very, yeah. He was definitely an attention guy. Which is I'm not holding that against him in any way. I think most people that play professional sports... They're a part of them is in it for the attention, but come on, man.
Yeah, I mean that's the lifestyle you chose.
The wokeness side of it all is rather disheartening. I don't watch sports to be woke.
I mean, the whole point of sports was something that people could unify around, and it was something that they could kind of entertain your mind and keep your thoughts occupied. Mm-hmm. And now it's gotten to the point where you have to social justice warrior yourself all over the place, and
the NBA's gone off the rails with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it really has.
I used to be a really big NBA fan, right? I love basketball, and I just can't.
It's hard.
I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
There is a player I just read earlier today. He changed his name, though, in response to something, because he's very anti-China, and he came out very heavily against them.
Is that Enes Kanter?
I didn't read the whole article, but
guy from Turkey?
It might have been. And he was he's very anti the way the Chinese handle things. He says he's just not. He's not for what they stand for and what they represent.
I'm gonna assume that's Enes Kanter, because he was the guy that put the China shoes with LeBron on.
Oh, there you go.
When he played against LeBron, and he had like LeBron James kneeling to Winnie the Pooh, which is a caricature of Xi Jinping.
Oh, the virus that they didn't use the XI name.
G.
I know we're kind of jumping subjects here, but you that just made me remember.
I mean, you can definitely morph into this topic.
The G, it's not the G variant. Why can't we have the G variant?
Omicron.
It's got to be Omicron. So this is like a transformer. It's actually from Futurama, that weird looking alien guy. But I mean, they jumped over the G variant. Which I guess, and chances are this thing's probably been around for a long time. And they say they found it in South Africa. But it's not that it necessarily originated there. They just happened to do the testing, and they were like, "Oh, look, it's a new thing, right?"
It's from different from the other versions.
Yeah, it could have started anywhere. They just happened to find it in South Africa. So it's.
But again, we have
super scary, right? I'm gonna see these. We're gonna hear some of these statistics coming out. I mean, this must be hundreds of thousands of cases already.
Yeah, but here again, we have another strain that's less virulent, more transmissible, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's what you get with a virus that becomes more virulent, right? If it's more virulent, it doesn't transmit very well, right? Because the body tends to fight those ones off because it's so pronounced and it's so in their face that your body has to react. It's right, like, when it loses virulency, it becomes more transmissible, with like the common cold. Okay, the common cold is extremely transmissible, and it goes around and it goes around, but it doesn't kill in these high numbers.
No,
and now we're hearing about this Omicron variant, which it's so transmissible.
Sky is falling.
But from the reports that have come out so far, and I mean this is just the initial reporting. Give it a month, we might hear something different. There might be some other side effects that were unknown at the time. But as of right now, they're talking about mild cold-like symptoms.
Yeah. They don't even lose their smell or their taste anymore.
And we're talking about, I mean, the U.S. is already in talks about saying, what are we going to do? Do we lock down again?
Which is crazy. I
mean, you're talking about locking down on something that you just found out about 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm. And the reason they're so paranoid about it is I guess there are a lot of spike mutations, they call it. And they're very worried about it being able to evade the vaccines, as if the vaccines aren't already being...
It's not what I heard from Pfizer.
Evaded.
Pfizer said...
But I mean, honestly, that's...
Pfizer said in 3 weeks they can make a more directed version of the vaccine towards this new variant.
Do you not find this odd that these... I think it was Pfizer and Merck, they just recently came out with these COVID pills. And in the back of my head, I'm like, well, why would you really need these pills, right? The world is becoming more and more vaccinated, and if everything goes as planned, as they say, the vaccines are going to stop everything. The number has gone up, what herd immunity is necessarily. But the U.S. has to be very, very high, whether through natural immunity or through the vaccines. I mean, that our number has to be... I think it's pretty substantial.
I think it's at least 50% with a single shot or double shotted, and I think it's upwards of 62 or 63% with at least a single shot.
And then how many people like me, myself, are just the natural immunity? That number has to be, I mean, are we talking into the 80s possibly? With the number of people that
you would have to assume for those that didn't get tested, for those that didn't have any symptoms, that were asymptomatic. But I mean, there's been reports about those that are asymptomatic not showing antibodies, right?
That's bizarre.
And they're thinking maybe because it wasn't a large enough load capacity of the virus in the system that the body couldn't actually create antibodies for it, because it just wasn't that prevalent in the system.
They just didn't get enough of it for your body to really care.
Yeah, and so you just kind of shrugged it off, and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't enough that your body decided, hey, we needed to create something for this. It
makes sense.
So I mean, there is that, and I think they kind of worry about those that have been asymptomatic. But still, I think in this overall case, when you're talking about a new variant, I mean, how many variants are we going to go through, and how many are we going to continue to lock down everything for?
I'm just so done. Hey, on July 4th of this year, Joe Biden had his speech that said we conquered it. We were over COVID July 4th.
Have you seen the numbers about so last year I think it was around 220,000 people had died and succumbed to COVID-19.
Those were all on Trump, okay?
Yep, and now we are in month 11. Now we'll call it 10. We'll call it month 10.
Keep it 10. There you go.
We'll call it month 10 of Joe Biden's regime.
It is a regime.
And we are only at
what?
Only.
Uh-oh.
We are only at 320,000 or so.
I feel like that number's more.
And that's with vaccines. That's with therapeutics. That's with other ways to combat and especially with more information, right? With more detailed information, much more knowledge about what this thing is. And we have seen more deaths in these 10 months than we saw underneath.
But that's not Trump. That's not on Biden though, right?
I mean,
that's still on Trump, isn't it? That's what the media's playing this as.
That's how they're playing it. But I honestly don't see how you put this on either.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. At this point, early on, you could say, well, Trump didn't react fast enough, right? You could make that argument.
You can make the argument that.
But now, in hindsight, now we're looking at it and we're going to say, well, what could anybody have actually done? Because look at what Biden has done with the vaccines available, dude. With the ability, the knowledge, I guess, that we have. I mean, what could more we have done other than to literally shut the entire country down? I mean, you're going to ruin far more people's lives than have already been ruined by doing that.
I think there's more to it than meets the eye, honestly. I mean, we look at what Trump did, right? And you heard a lot of talk about how this is not going to be a big thing. This thing doesn't stay around, right? And that's what gives everybody this perception that, Trump wasn't doing a whole lot, right? And I'm not saying the guy is perfect. He made some blunders, right? He put up this front as though, essentially to not panic the masses. But behind the scenes, he was doing some things. He was trying to make some moves to limit the flow, to kind of stymie the progress of what was going on.
But he wasn't
with the lack of information, right?
He wasn't the only one that said this thing was going to blow over. This was not a big thing.
There was a lot of voices at the time because there just wasn't enough known about it.
And let's be honest here, in the days of modern medicine, to be able to foresee something like this happening on such a massive scale and to prolong itself for as long as it has, I'm not sure many people could have called this and been like, this is what's going to happen. 2022 is going to come around and we're still going to be dealing with this thing.
Yeah.
I don't think many people when it first started would have said that.
Well, no, they said a vaccine was going to put this thing in a grave, right? It was going to end this thing. And again, that's the big reason why I wouldn't go walking around blaming Trump for what happened. Just like I wouldn't go walking around blaming Biden for what happened, right?
No,
I can blame Biden.
I don't either. What do you do?
Yeah.
Honestly, what do you do?
You can blame Biden for the economic failures. You can blame him for, domestic policies. You can blame him for foreign policies, same as Trump. But when it comes to a virus, especially a new virus that really nobody had any idea around, and now that you have all of this information with it, there's still not a whole lot that you can do. A lot of this is personal responsibility. It's kind of up to what the technology that we have to deal with these kinds of things.
And you can't even say get vaccinated and you're going to end this thing. We're seeing time and time again this thing is bypassing the vaccines even. They're pushing these boosters at this point, but what kind of weird argument is that, right? Saying to the people who have not got the jabs, go get the jabs, and then telling the people that have gotten the jabs, saying, go out and get the third and the fourth. That sounds like the fourth will be coming out. Yeah, that's a hard sell. For me personally, it's a hard sell.
Here's a question, right? And I am by no means a virologist. I'm no PhD. But when does this come back to essentially over-medicating, right? These viruses that we're seeing coming out right now. And I get that this virus is most likely manipulated in a lab of some sort.
Ooh, is that right? Why they skipped the G variant?
I get that. But a lot of these things, a lot of these new viruses that we see popping up, and a lot of these ones that become these more dangerous strains, how much of this is due to us, over-prescribing antibiotics and over-medicating our children and ourselves, right? Anytime you have a problem, you pop an ibuprofen, right? I got some muscle pain, pop an ibuprofen, pop a Tylenol. I got I pulled a muscle here. I'm gonna pop some muscle relaxers. I'm gonna pop some Xans. I'm gonna pop, whatever I gotta pop. You know what I mean?
There's a drug for that. Is what you're saying.
When do we start taking this back to personal responsibility of these pharmaceutical companies pumping out drugs with horrible side effects, and nobody comes back and talks about this when these things mutate to this extreme version.
No, and we have taken on as a society that the pharmaceutical companies are simply there to help us. They are the benefit to all society. And don't get me wrong, there are some, there's probably quite a bit of drugs.
There's beneficials.
There are a lot of good things, but these are companies. These are out for their bottom dollar. At the end of the day, they need to be able to sell these products. They need to be able to market these products. And I mean, I'm not one to say that I'm going to trust my life with a corporation or a company that's doing nothing but pushing for profit.
Well, how often do you flip on the TV, see an ad for some sort of pharmaceutical drug, and maybe a commercial or two later see some sort of recall or some sort of advertisement from a law company, right? Did you take such and such drug with such and such side effects? Well, let us know and we'll get you a class,
that list is never ending.
When do we talk about these things, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Pfizer was in charge of Chantix.
Chantix was anti-smoking drug,
yep,
right?
And it got hit with the largest settlement. I think it was like $3.2 billion or something along those lines, right? So it was almost to the point where it was felonious.
So it comes back to that they knew about what was happening, right?
And there was a
knew about it.
Yeah, there was a blatant disregard for how they put this product out, knowing that there was these catastrophic, essentially, defaults in the drug.
So would you say that they were willingly spitting misinformation?
Negative. I would not say that because obviously the pharmaceutical company would never lie.
But that's funny because the Pfizer CEO came out and said those that are giving misinformation about the vaccine should be criminally punished.
Exactly.
But the misinformation on their different, right? Totally different. No. Yeah.
Rules for thee and not for me.
That's totally what it is.
Different shoes on different people's feet.
They feel different. That's true. I mean, it'd be hard to walk in a ballerina shoe.
You can't walk in a Pfizer shoe, right? They're wearing a size 12. I wear a size 10. It just wouldn't fit well.
You could wear really.
I could stuff them.
Yeah, you could.
But I mean,
figure something out.
Clearly, I just don't understand the position that Pfizer is in. Right?
It's just the hypocrisy is so apparent. And did they even report when it was reported that the Pfizer CEO came out and said this? I wonder how many people actually thought about it and they were like, "What? Just a little bit ago, you guys got smacked with this lawsuit." And that is literally the definition of misinformation. And
problem is that nobody knows.
No, and that's just I don't think many people.
It's not been in the media. It's not in the news.
They did not exactly. You had to go kind of underground to find that information.
Unless you listen to alternative media sources, right? Unless you listen to these independent news sources that you would find maybe on YouTube or Apple or Spotify, right? These podcasters, right? Unless you find somebody who's going to actually dig into the sourcing of these stories, you're not going to hear about the things that actually matter.
But I really like the state-run media. Did I say that out loud? I didn't say that out loud. State-run media is the best, though. They give me all the best information, the things that I need to know. They would never lie to me.
YouTube, we totally believe in CNN.
And throw Fox News in there for that.
Oh, all of them.
Throw them all in there. Just anything bunch them together. And
honestly, if it's on cable TV, I typically do not trust them.
I mean, they're out for the profits too, though. At the end of the day, right?
It's all bottom line.
They're all in it for the clicks. They're all in it for the views, which is ironic.
Everything is typically bottom line. I mean, I would probably trust maybe Fox a little bit more, but I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them either. I mean, they're going to try to sell me a narrative.
Oh yeah, and
just as much as CNN or MSNBC.
And it always has to be the opposite of CNN. They go back and forth. They're like siblings.
I mean, every once in a while, I get a report from the Washington Post, right? I get a story from them that's actually decent. It's an actually decent story. There are. You
find it like that one I sent you just the other night.
From NBC.
NBC, yeah. They say
about college,
About college and the we should probably stop pushing this concept that you need college to be
successful
and contribute to society.
Yeah.
That those that do not have a college degree.
Yeah, the college myth. And
that's what they called it, the college myth.
That is what is absolutely so shocking about some of these things sometimes, right? I mean, I wouldn't think that I would get a news story from NBC that would be factually correct.
Mm-hmm. And it does not fit the narrative that they are normally pushing at all. The total opposite. And
here they give me something that is actually a fairly hard-hitting piece of news.
So for those that haven't read it, I had to dig to find it. But when I saw the headlines, I had to click and had to read it. And what the guy was saying was this infrastructure plan that just passed, the amount of money going to jobs that do not require your 4-year degrees, your PhDs, was incredible, right? So you need welders, you need plumbers, you need electricians. These are trade schools. You can typically get those in 2 years or under.
And so the craziest thing is that a lot of these positions, you can make somewhere between $25 to $45 an hour, you know, right? And those are decently paying jobs. Those are jobs you make a living, right? It's not a job that you're going to, as a welder, you could turn that job into a business and make millions of dollars.
Correct.
Right? It's something that you could do.
It's possible.
But most of the time, these jobs are something that they're not going to make you millionaires, but you can live comfortably with.
Absolutely. You can raise a family with it. That's kind of what we do. We're not welders by any means, but we get by.
Yeah, we work.
And we don't have jobs. We don't have to take on that huge amount of debt.
Yeah, I don't have to run credit card after credit card.
Exactly, just to get by.
I don't float paycheck to paycheck. Right? I am able to work a solid 40 to 50 hours a week, and I'm not over encumbered by debt. I don't have to worry about overexerting myself to a point where it's financially unreasonable to do anything.
And they said that there was a huge gap in welders. I'll use welders as an example. There was a generational gap. There's a lot of really old welders, and then there's a lot of really young welders, but there's not many middle-aged welders because that came at a time when college was the only way to succeed in life.
Well, I think that's the worst thing we did was we sold our millennial generation this pipe dream.
Yep.
And then we saddled them with $100,000 worth of student loan debt that they'll never be able to pay back.
No. Yeah, their life will continuously be altered, and then their children's lives are going to be taking a step back too, because they're going to be born into that constantly having to worry about paying your bills because mom or dad has this huge loan that's going to sit over their head until Joe Biden forgives it.
But
like
you know,
he promised.
The strangest thing though is that Gen X actually has more college educated than millennials do, right? And millennials were fairly high. As a percentage, right? And Gen X has actually been...
They're younger, right?
Higher, yes.
Yeah.
So this would have been the last generation that you're talking about, 16 to 24 years of age.
What do you gather from that? That's interesting.
Well, the weirdest thing is that these Gen Xers are educated. They didn't take on a lot of debt. And they're actually saving. Right,
really?
Unlike millennials who didn't have the ability to save or were never taught to save.
We went through
these Gen Xers.
Yeah. These
Gen Xers are actually, they're not buying a bunch of stuff. They're not spending a lot of money, but they're stashing a lot of money. And I think that might be the biggest difference between Gen X and the millennial generation, right? The Gen X grew up on social media, on technology and phones, whereas the millennials kind of were a mixed breed between the two, right?
Yeah, we totally were.
And
that's weird.
Surprisingly, some of these Gen Xers might be doing a little better, and I think that's because there is an actual higher percentage of them that are more conservative based.
I believe that.
And that's because millennials were not having children, right? So the liberal millennials were not having, I shouldn't say liberal, the leftist millennials were really not having children.
That is true.
And so what you get is these conservative millennials who were having more children. So you start to get more of a conservative slant or based Gen X.
That's interesting. So the people that had children were more likely to lean conservative.
Yes.
And the people that didn't were more likely to lean. So the younger generation is, their parents at least,
slightly skewed a little bit more.
And it's obviously not 100%.
It's not a large percentage.
It wouldn't even be a large, but it wouldn't have to be very much. At the end of the day, you only need, I mean, look at the presidential elections. They're usually within a few percentage points at the end of the day, which, that's that's a very interesting theory.
That's where they sit right now, right? And that's clearly got to be something that is going to affect things in the long term, especially a generation that saves, right? You're talking, there hasn't been a generation that's really done a lot of saving since...
The baby boomers? I don't even know.
Maybe even before. I mean, you're talking about, when right around the time of the Great Depression, maybe before, the Roaring 20s, when, and even then, people were kind of overexerting themselves, taking out loans, which is what caused your depression in the first place. So, I mean, a generation that's coming up and they're saving, right? I mean, that automatically has to raise the national GDP to some degree, because there's no longer just an absorbent amount of cash flowing around it, but it's got to be affected to a large degree.
I hope you're right, because that would. I hope you're right. I hope I'm a good model for my children to grow up.
I'm trying to keep this as positive as possible.
I feel better.
Based on the situation that we're in.
I never thought of it. It makes sense though, and even now, having children now, it's expensive, but the people that are doing it. And maybe that's because of the area that I live in. But I would be willing to bet that, yes, the conservative people are going to have children more. And I wonder if it's because they watch their parents. I mean, we've gone through some pretty incredible collapses of the economy.
Yeah.
Not only did it happen, the tech bubbles of the early 20s, right? Or early 2000s, early 20s. The early 2000s, that was one. I watched my parents go through that. And then we had 9/11. Yep. That was another big one, right? And then COVID. So we've had three massive...
the housing crisis as well.
Oh, and so four. I even left one out. Here I am trying to rattle them off. Yeah, so we've had 4 massive stock market collapses and then rebuilds.
Well, I think it also factors even into further than that, right? When it comes to, especially leftists, not having children, right? You get these people that are in these large cities with extreme politics.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're being told things like don't have kids because the climate can't handle it. Right. People are saying that they're afraid to raise their kids in these kinds of climate situations. They're afraid to raise their kids in these cities where it's massive amounts of crime. Right. So these leftists are actively not having children, and that's why you see the school system slant so hard about trying to indoctrinate children. Is because the left is not having them, but they want yours.
They're trying to catch up. They're
so they have
seeing what's happening. Yeah,
they understand that they're not putting out enough kids, so they've got to indoctrinate the kids that are out there, and I think that's why you see that push right now. But I mean, leftists really are having this issue, and it's to their own detriment. In all honesty,
so this will be a somewhat sidetrack. I'm gonna keep it on the same subject though. It's funny you mentioned the school systems, right? So my son brought home a pamphlet or some kind of thing that has to do with governments, right? They're learning about governments right now in social studies. And he's 8 years old, so he's a 3rd grader. And it breaks down what parts of the government are responsible for what, right? Mm-hmm. And I found it really hilarious because when it got to the state governments, one of the things that was emphasized in this school system was the right, or not the right to vote, but how their elections are to be held. It was not a federal issue, and they made that very, very clear, which I found hilarious.
Well, that's something that you would see with more smaller cities,
but
or towns.
that's how constitutionally the whole thing's written up, and this massive push to nationalize the election systems was never supposed to be.
Well, you have to nationalize it at this point in time, right? According to the left. Yes. You have to do that because clearly...
Because they're going to lose.
It's not even about that. I mean,
it's true, though. It's about power. I mean, it really is. Would you say it's about power?
It is, but I think it goes deeper than that. I think it goes to the only way you can absorb complete and absolute power is to dissolve the Constitution, right?
Oh, 100%.
And the only way you can do that is by slowly degrading it to the point where all it is just a piece of paper with no value.
Well, that's what the piece of paper with no value, right? The only thing that the federal government was good for on this chart was to print the money and the coins and to regulate trades between the states, and then to protect from foreign invasion.
Foreign and domestic, yes.
Those things, right? Mm-hmm. Everything else was left up to local and state laws, but that's, or government,
based upon how the Constitution is written.
Exactly. So they were actually, I was shocked to find that information when I was going over it, because my son will now know the actuality of how the Constitution was intended to be.
Well, even if the school didn't teach it, it would be up to you to make sure that he was informed of those things. Right, that's why you are politically involved.
Feel bad.
That's not a conversation that you're going to have with somebody who's 8 or 9 years of age.
Yeah, so I'm glad they're doing it. I find it hilarious. Good for them. Yeah, the federal government's not worth. They're trying. They're absolutely trying to make the federal government the biggest. I mean, it already is bigger than it ever should have been. They're trying to make it control every single aspect of our lives. Well, and this new Omicron variant that everyone's freaking out about is just going to push them even further. New York on Friday or Saturday already declared a state of emergency over it.
Every time I hear that, I just want us to be like, Omicron Persei, I hate.
I think we're going to see like a transformer come out and become a bus or something. That's what I think. It should be the Z variant or the G variant. I'm the more time that goes by, the more frustrated I get that no one is seriously pushing into where this COVID came from. They're really not pushing it. They're saying it came from a bat, and then it didn't come from a bat because it's not natural. We never found it. And then China's like, no, we're not going to help you investigate any of this. You're not allowed into our country. And everyone's just like, okay, whatever. No, it's fine. The biggest things that's happened to the world in, I don't know, centuries and centuries. And no one seems to really care where it comes from. They're just...
You can't ask too many questions when a certain governmental entity controls the vast majority of consumer product goods.
Oh, she's like, they're almost like holding us hostage. I mean, it's true. You're not wrong. Yeah. You might be right. You think there's some movement behind that? Do you think that's a possibility?
I wouldn't put it past them.
I wouldn't either.
I think that the Chinese government is clearly one of the most dangerous entities out there. Their ability to control just about everything. I mean, they control the narrative. They've controlled other governmental entities. They control the WHO. Their subtle, yet not subtle, attempts at thwarting Taiwan from freedom, their absorption of Beijing, I wouldn't put it past them.
Which is really sad. I was really bummed out when Beijing was overcome. I thought there was enough rules and laws in place where you wouldn't see what used to be an incredibly free city, given its location on the map. Just, it's gone. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, there was again, there were laws written into that was supposed to essentially protect them.
Yeah.
And
our government, and I'm not saying we should have intervened, but man, I wouldn't have cared if we did, I guess. But you're probably
sanctions,
right.
You can intervene without intervening, right? Sanctioning, levying more tariffs, right? Things that would be more economically devastating. But then again, it's not, because we all know that China would just devalue their currency.
Yeah, they have ways around it.
Right? I mean, you can levy all the taxes and tariffs that you want against them, but they're just going to devalue their currency in order to make their currency the same. I have
a feeling they really don't care what we do at the end of the day.
Never.
Like, I think we might have touched on this. I don't know if we did, actually. We released some oil from the reserve, right? From the strategic reserve. In trying to, in coordination, I guess they said, with other countries around the world, in solidarity, to stick it to the Saudis and the Opec guys. And I mean, what do you think OPEC thought when they saw us doing that?
You know what OPEC did?
They were like, do you think we care?
No. Do you want to know what the actual response from OPEC was, right? From the Saudis.
What was this?
They cut production about the exact amount that was pushed out.
For real?
They cut production.
They were like, really?
There was no balancing, right? You can push out 50 million barrels. And the Saudis said, we just won't push out 50 million barrels for the next couple of days. And the gas price wouldn't really make an effect, right? And it did. I mean,
move, man.
You watched gas prices move maybe 3 or 4 cents.
In Fremont, it didn't move at all in Fremont.
Okay, I've seen some places across Omaha where it was like 3 or 4 cents, kind of fluctuate up and down.
That saves the day.
But 50 million barrels is only about 2.5 days of oil.
So what was the because obviously it's not going to drop prices. What was the point?
The point is to make it look as though you're doing something for the American people, right?
And then they'll be like, oh, because yeah, thanks, Joe.
Joe Biden's polls have taken a dramatic dump.
Because he doesn't do anything.
The man is...
He is so bad.
I think there was like 16 or 17 states where he's polling almost right at 30%.
Well, what's that... I think it's Rasmussen came out with a poll and said that Joe Biden would lose to Donald Trump in a rematch like 50-something to 38.
Yeah, I mean...
if it were held today.
Right now, Joe Biden is in a terrible position, right? So
because he put himself in that position, though. This is nothing...
And because he's done that, he's got to do something to make it look as though he's trying something for the people. And right now, that's making facetious gestures as though he's doing something. And that's what this barrel push out was all about, right? It was about, hey, we're doing something for the people. And in all actuality, he knows that the Saudis are just going to cut their oil production. Yeah,
if you remember, when Trump went to him last year or 2 years, whatever it was, they did it. They were like, we're going to boost production. Mm-hmm. Trump came to him, made it happen. Biden goes to him, what do? They give him the big middle finger and turn the spigot down.
Yeah. And again, most likely the reason that they did something for Trump was because he was willing to give them weapons, right?
Yeah,
and Trump came out and blatantly said it in their face and was like, we're selling weapons to the Saudi Arabians. And everybody was like, oh, he said the quiet part out loud. He sure did, right? He sure did. And I don't think I agree with him giving weapons to the Saudis, right? I don't think the Saudis are all that trustworthy, especially when they control the massive amount of oil right now, right? So clearly they're leveraging their oil production and their creation in order to get what they want. So obviously they went to the Biden administration and said, hey, we can do you a favor. And Biden was like, oh, I'm not doing anything with you. So they're like, screw you, bud. Yeah. And they didn't do anything, right? And they decided, oh, he's gonna push out some oil. We'll just screw him, right? Because he wouldn't negotiate with us.
And it's almost like the U.S. could have prevented this entirely by just staying the number one producer of the world, to control our own destiny, if you will, and not rely on everybody. But it's not
destroying the fracking industry was by far not helpful. It's not a good idea.
Shutting down
pipelines is not a good idea.
So right? let's put all that oil that could have gone through that pipeline. Let's put it on trucks and rail cars now. I don't even know if they transport boats on rail cars. Yep. Whatever. Let's just. What do you think the emission load off and the time consumption? The money put into transporting that oil instead of through that pipeline.
It's probably quite a bit, but
substantial.
I think the biggest factor is you're more likely to get oil spills when you're transporting it, by rail, or you're transporting it by boat than you are by a pipeline.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, those are drastically larger numbers that you're talking about.
And we've kind of touched on this before. The power necessities of the modern world are not going to decrease. They are not going to go down.
No.
As more countries become more developed, their power necessities are only going to increase. And you're high if you think solar and wind power are going to power the modern world. It's just not going to happen. They can supplement. By all means, they can supplement. But they do not have the capacity, the ability.
Until you're able to build batteries that can actually store this kind of energy.
That is one of the biggest problems, isn't it?
Well, Elon Musk is working on storage, right? And he's created some kinds of batteries that can store to some extent, but you would have to be able to build massive factories of batteries, right? And you just don't have that kind of lithium right now.
Without mining, right?
Yeah, you'd have to mine the the components of a battery.
So wait, you have to dig into the earth. You have to ruin nature. Make these massive pits.
The worst part is that there's very few places where you can find lithium in that quantity.
Where's one of them?
I want to say there's parts of Africa.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan is one of them.
Like we just left
There's these issues, right? If you can't, right? So what you get with green energy right now is it's as it pumps out energy, it's in a must-use sort of mode.
Like right away.
You have to use it as it's being produced.
Correct.
There is no storage capability. So I put solar panels. I don't store that solar panel energy and then use it later on when I need it. I have to use it in the moment, right? So if it's cloudy, and I'm depending on solar energy,
you have nothing.
I don't have any way to get energy then, right? I'm out that day.
And even if
what it is,
I don't know the exact numbers, but how we need to figure this out eventually. How many solar panels you need if it was perfectly sunny to run your entire house, no problems.
You can do it with some of the solar panels that they've got out now, but the problem is the amount of carbon emissions that it takes to create those solar panels, or maybe those windmills, or those hydroelectric dams, right?
Geothermal.
It is geothermal is different.
That'd be cool.
They are actually working on geothermal technology, and
I think
there's something to it. I think.
Yes,
I think there's something to it.
There's houses in Fremont here that heat their homes in the winter off of geothermal.
Yeah.
And they say it actually works.
Geothermal is something different.
You're not going to push your house to 80 degrees, but
No.
you're going to keep it comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, what we have it in here right now, it's cold in here, but we like it cold. I wear hoodies all day.
Well, there are people that are talking about graphene.
What is graphene? Sounds like something is in a pencil. Or is that graphite?
That's graphite.
All right.
Graphene is...
What is graphene?
It's made of, collected carbon. And you can use that to store massive amounts of energy. It's a great conductor. You'll have to look into it. But there's
is this what Elon Musk is working? You said he was working on...
No, Elon Musk is not doing anything with graphene. So
right.
I watch... I'll have to shout out Tim Pool and the guys at Timcast.
Nice.
Mostly Ian Crossland. That man talks about graphene like it is going out of style. But apparently...
It's going in style, though.
Graphene is maybe the way to go when it comes to doing energy kinds of deals. You'd have to do some research, look into it. I'm going to have to do my research on it, actually.
But it is an ability to store things.
Yes, it sounds like it's got this great capability of... You can do a lot of things with it, right? You can even use it to help clean up carbon emissions.
That was my next thing. You said it's captured carbon, so it's literally pulling carbon out of the air.
Yeah, something along those lines, right? That's my understanding, at least, right? And again, I've got to do more research on it. But I mean, these are the interesting things that you can do, right? That we're not talking about, right? These are we subsidize all of these other green energy corporations, right? God. These solar panels, these Tesla and everybody else. When if we just let the market decide,
I promise you,
they would come up with better solutions.
Yes.
That are energy efficient, that would deal with the problem more effectively than what we're doing right now with the government.
We're forcing it. We're absolutely forcing it, yes.
Okay, we're going to hard segue.
Uh-oh.
Because we've got to talk about this, what is it, that Waukesha,
Wisconsin.
Ooh.
This car accident. It was an accident, bud.
How quickly did that come out of the news?
Pretty fast.
I mean...
the next day.
12 hours?
CNN dubs this as an accident. So the backstory, right? There's a Christmas parade going on in this town in Wisconsin. From my understanding, one of the most conservative districts in Wisconsin. So very, very conservative town. They're having a Christmas parade. And this driver, which the reports have all but kind of been completely squashed now. Apparently he was running from police from a stabbing. This is what was reported, right? He's running from a stabbing. He drives through the barricades and proceeds to serpentine through this parade to hit, was it over 50 people?
I think it was, so far it's 62 injured, I think.
And 6 confirmed deaths.
if not maybe one.
But
or
it's
two
not.
more.
It's not a massacre though. This is
It was an accident.
It
was an accident.
Because he clearly was just trying to hit those people.
Yeah, I mean it's the whole thing.
It's sickening, dude. Absolutely sickening.
A lot of it looks like what you would have seen overseas in Europe when you were seeing all of these parades being run down by a man in a van, right? It looks a lot like that, right? And from some of the reports that I had been reading was he kind of pulls up to this parade, an officer is standing there and he knocks on the hood as this guy is driving, right? This guy is moving slow enough that this officer is able to tap on his hood and tell him he needs to stop and not go down this route because it's a parade route. The guy continues to move. Yeah. So when he gets, right, as this officer is tapping on him, this guy's already got a smashed up hood, a fender, because he'd already driven through the barricades, right? So he's already on the parade route. He's already on the parade route as he's doing this, right? So this officer taps on his hood saying, you need to turn. And the guy keeps kind of crawling through, right, doing 3-4 miles an hour. And this officer then walks up, knocks on his window, and is telling him he needs to turn. And at this point, the officer says this guy speeds up. You can hear his tires...
Just floors it, yeah.
Yeah, you can hear the tires peel out, and this dude speeds up, takes a hard turn onto the parade route, like 100% parade route now, and just starts swerving through the crowd. It was even to the point where the officers fired shots, right? They shot at him because they thought that there was something intentional and malicious about what he was doing.
And there was. I mean, you cannot watch those videos. I don't know if they still have them up. I imagine they took them down. They're incredibly graphic.
It's disturbing.
You can't watch that and tell me that this was not done with complete and utter intention.
Yeah, this is full malice.
This was absolutely... He knew what he was doing the entire time.
Yeah, and people have been pointing out his social media accounts where he's been talking about how he wanted to hurt white people. I mean,
he was a huge BLM guy.
It
is what it is. I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason he did all these things, but there was clear he did some horrible things. I don't even know how to speak on it.
It reminds me a lot about like the Las Vegas shooting that happened. What was that? 4 years ago? 5 years ago?
Yeah, and I bet they're not going to find
3 or 4
because they never found a purpose.
There was no motive.
There's no motive, right?
That's within it would have to have been 4 or 5 days. That story was buried under the radar.
What happened to that? Because now that you mention that, I wasn't following news greatly back then. I remember hearing about it. What was the motive? There was nothing.
There was nothing. The FBI never came back on and said anything. The police in Las Vegas never came back and said anything. It was just this. It happened and it's done, and we moved on and nobody said anything else, right? But we hear about what was that shooting in Florida?
The Florida man?
No.
That's just the first thing that popped.
It was that school shooting in Florida.
Oh, dude, I don't know.
Oh, what was that? Which one was that? With David Hogg.
I don't even know who that is.
Oh my God.
So let's just pretend I just said the name.
There was that big school shooting in
Sandy
Florida.
Hook?
Not Sandy Hook.
That was in the Massachusetts area or something.
Yeah, that was up north.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's
just pretend I just said it.
It's gonna bother me.
What happened about that one?
But we got more resolve out of that one because they made it politically motivated, right? They made this a political statement, and they were like, this was their attack on guns. This is their attack on the assault rifle. But we don't see that in the situation with the Las Vegas shooting. We don't see that right now in the situation with this Waukesha shooting or driving, incident. And I can't even call it an incident, right? It is a massacre.
Yeah, it was.
It is domestic terrorism, and you can't call it anything other than that.
Oh, and Biden and Harris didn't say a word on it for the longest time. And then Biden comes out and said, we need to not rush to judgment. I'm thinking to myself, like, man.
So where's my question?
This was a week after Rittenhouse's
my question
trial.
here is, where is the calls for making SUVs illegal?
Ban the Ford Escapes.
But where's the call for that, right? If we're going to be honest and genuine about everything that happened, right? And obviously, I'm not trying to make this situation political. I think what happened there is absolutely horrible, and I think this man should be handed the death penalty without batting an eye.
I would agree with you, dude. He ran over like little kids.
Yeah, that is reprehensible in the utmost fashion. But I'm just trying to be like the left right now, right? I want to do what the left does, and I'm tired of fighting the correct way, right? I'm tired of having to try to legitimize my position, right? I want to be able to make off the record, off the hand, just straight off the cuff kind of situations
and have no declare, repercussions, right?
Declare whatever I want and not have to worry about what happens afterwards.
That sounds exactly like.
Because this right here is a situation that the left would never have let go, right? If this would have been somebody on the right, right, we would have heard about this nonstop for the next year or two, right? This would have been the next Charlottesville, right? This would have been Charlottesville.
I promise this would have been front page news to this day.
Yeah.
They would still
they still talk about Charlottesville, right?
Yeah.
Joe Biden ran for president because of Donald Trump's remarks about Charlottesville, right? The lie that is perpetrated in the media.
There you go.
But that's why he ran, right? But we don't get that right now, right?
No.
We don't get any condemnation, right? There was a Democrat in
Illinois.
Is
it the Illinois one? Yeah, I think
the one that said this was karma?
Yeah.
For the Rittenhouse trial?
That's
karma.
What she said. It was probably self-defense.
It was probably self-defense, and it was karma.
Yeah.
Right? That is the left.
That is what you guys are supporting if you...
Right?
Yeah.
This is a situation where we should be screaming.
But we don't.
As a whole, should be screaming about this.
The mainstream media did not carry that. That had to be... You had to dig to find that. About that Congress... I forget what district they're out of. I think it's somewhere in Chicago. You had to dig to find that came out.
I mean... We had 9/11. And in 9/11, the nation unified. Right? We came together and we fought as a nation. We pushed towards the same goal. We wanted the same things.
Yes.
And here we are, 20 years later, okay, fighting a pandemic. And we're more fractured than ever, right? Something that should have unified a nation, something that should have brought us together, has divided us more than anything we've seen.
Wait till the next round of restrictions coming with this new variant. It's just going to make matters worse, I promise.
And now we have a massacre,
better.
Right? We have a massacre, and we still can't unify.
Swept under the rug.
We still can't get on the same page and say, this is abhorrent.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with politics, right? We should say, in one voice, this is wrong.
This is wrong.
This should not happen. And what do?
Self-defense. That's what they did.
We call
100%
and scream and yell about how this is what you get for letting off some young 17, 18-year-old boy. Right? This is what you get.
That's the the wonderful world we live in, right? The Rittenhouse, when it came out, there were calls instantly for his head. Right, there was instantly calls that he was a white supremacist, and this all had to do with...
To this day, they still say it.
And then, yeah, that's where we are.
For a case that was clearly self-defense.
Yeah. Right.
This is what we do. We because he's what, a young white boy, and then we say this system was made for white people. How many people? Okay, and I'm gonna throw this out there, and I'll say it, and I don't care.
Let's hear it.
How many cases in Chicago of black on black go under the radar? No charges. Somebody being let off. And I don't hear a word from the left.
That's
I don't hear anybody say anything about it. They don't care.
No, they don't care.
They don't care.
It'll be the first time the left does not give two craps about any person.
Because they can't weaponize that, right?
Yeah,
you cannot weaponize black on black. But you can weaponize white on white. You can weaponize anything that's got a white person involved in it, right? Especially when you want to say that this system is geared specifically towards white people. While you're blatantly ignoring all of the cases that didn't go the way of what black people were involved in.
Yeah, so at the same time the Rittenhouse trial happened, there was another trial. And I wish I had followed this more closely. It involved a black man, also involved a shooting, and I think 2 people died in that one as well. He was also exonerated of all charges in claims of self-defense.
Yep, that was the one I was telling you about a couple nights ago.
And you didn't hear about that on the news. That wasn't a big thing, right? It wasn't it was just like good for them.
But I'll say in that situation, that guy's also being charged with unlawful possession of a weapon, right? Because he was a felon. They couldn't get him on the murder charges, which sounded like self-defense for the most part. I mean, police officers jumped into, threw flashbangs into his window, killed his girlfriend. He shot an officer because he thought that they were that there were attackers coming into his house, and so he fired shots back, right? Because they didn't announce themselves. This is the problem with no-knock raids.
Yeah,
right?
That's bad.
You create a situation where there's very large potential for death and violence.
Well, good. I'm glad he was not charged then, because that my same response would have been. Because
he wasn't charged, the prosecution decided that they were going to push for 30 years for unlawfully having a gun.
I hope he gets not anywhere close to 30
And that's because he's a felon. And I think that is absolutely outrageous. And I would fight for his right to have a gun just the same as anybody else.
I would too. That's really...
Because everybody should have the right to defend themselves.
100%. Where did he live? Did he live in a major city?
I would assume so. I can't remember exactly where the case was from.
I mean, I guess that shouldn't matter, but it does. If you live in, like, you were just talking about Chicago. If you live in Chicago...
You're screwed.
You're constantly watching over your shoulder everywhere you go. The amount of shootings that go on in Chicago on a daily basis. And I say daily, I don't say weekly basis, right? It's a daily thing.
During the summer, on average, they have somewhere between 60 to 85 people shot. And somewhere between 5 to 20 people killed.
That's just crazy. And a lot of them are kids, from what I understand. They're
young.
There was a guy in Pennsylvania, I think it was Philadelphia, that was having Thanksgiving dinner and was shot. Mm-hmm. And had nothing to do with anything, just some random drive-by shooting. Surprise, surprise.
And this is the cities that you live in. I mean, get out of cities first and foremost.
Yeah, I don't think we have that here in little Fremontville, but not yet.
I mean, we've got a little bit of it in Omaha, but it's not on that scale. But it's getting there.
Oh yeah, the larger the city gets. I mean this is a perfect time to go into what's happening over in San Francisco.
Yeah,
in San Diego, a lot of California in general, really.
But the worst part is it's not just happening localized in like California, right? It's not just confined to that state. Mm-mm. It's been happening across the nation, right? And these mass groups of looters.
And you say these are like coordinated attacks.
Oh, there definitely are.
It's no longer just one person running in and grabbing something and running. That still happens, but now these are larger groups, right?
You've got 20 cars pull up to a scene. Mm-hmm. Everybody hop out, run through the store, grab what they want, throw it back in the car, take off. Right? That's coordinated. And that's because these prosecutors, these DAs aren't prosecuting these crimes, right?
They're not allowed to. They're not allowed. Isn't the laws that are saying you're not?
A lot of these DAs are Soros funded.
Oh, they're trying to be woke.
They're essentially woke. They have to be.
They're trying to make themselves feel better about themselves. They've been conditioned in their brains because of the color of their skin. They're racist. So they have to make sure to bend the rules to make them feel less racist, right?
Exactly.
That's what's happening,
That's
right?
That's what it is. And
I mean...
You've nailed it. You nailed it.
That's exactly what's happening. And it's those big cities that they're saying... I mean, what would you... How many stores... I don't have the exact number. How many stores... was it a Walgreens or a CVS... have moved out of San Francisco in particular...
It was
due to looting.
CVS's, and I want to say it was like 5 to 6.
Yeah.
That
just
shut
because
down.
They're like...
Several Targets that shut down.
They're losing so much money.
When the loss becomes more than what you're accruing, right? When you can no longer afford to stock up the shelves because every day you get hit and people just shove trash bag after trash bag of your stuff, mm-hmm. and walk out the door with it. I mean, obviously you can't function as a business. I mean, you're losing more than you're bringing in. Therefore, well, sorry, old people who needed your drugs from the CVS. You're gonna have to drive. You're gonna have to drive 15 miles to the next CVS because we can't keep this one here.
And that's okay. And that is the way these liberal cities are trying to operate.
I bet they run around high-fiving themselves for it.
They are great because they are super woke. They love being... There's got to be a better word. I hate the term woke. I don't know if it's just like I'm sick of hearing it, but... Who made up the word? Where did it come from?
A hipster? I don't know.
I bet Urban Dictionary has it. Where?
I don't think Urban Dictionary is the right way to go.
I mean, that's probably true.
But no, I mean, this is the sad reality of what we're in right now in this day and age.
Well, when AOC came out, this was months ago, obviously, she said, they're stealing for bread. You're just inflaming, you're just giving more power to the people stealing those hammers and crowbar. That was the most recent one, right? It was like a Home Depot.
A Home Depot got hit, and it was all of the stolen sledgehammers and crowbars.
Tools that you would typically see in future robberies.
No, it was obvious, Miles. Obviously, it was a bunch of construction workers who just didn't have enough tools to do the job necessary, right?
Probably
and
right.
They had no choice, right? That's their bread maker. So, according to AOC, they had to go steal those so they can make more money, so they could feed their families.
They needed the proper tool for the job, right? We preach that. We preach that at our job.
Oh boy. Full circle.
They couldn't just use banding cutters as hammers, all right? They really needed hammers. And they
not just hammers, sledgehammers.
The big stuff.
You got to be able to throw that through the tempered glass.
Oh, that's
those are hammer resistant.
That's not construction work, bud. But you're right. They're just doing a lot of construction in those cities, and they just had to do what they had to do.
The jewelry counter clearly was malfunctioning and had to be destroyed. Therefore, you needed that sledgehammer. You needed that sledgehammer to get that thing taken down the right way with as safe and effective as possible.
Maybe they're trying to melt it all down and donate it to help
all that gold and silver that they stole.
To help families in need.
They acquired,
maybe, right?
Acquired.
Oh, they found it.
It was
found it
there.
In the malfunctioning jewelry counter.
Clearly, it wasn't supposed to be in there. They were notified that it had to be removed, and it was not. So obviously, they didn't need it.
Is that equity at its finest?
Now, equity at its finest would be they should just be able to walk in without having to do the breaking and just be given those things,
all right?
Just walk up, take what you want. That would be equity.
Like a free sign.
Yeah, I mean this $2,000 gold watch, this platinum watch. Just take it. It's yours. For free.
I can eat with that. I can eat it. Literally, I can eat the gold.
Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
There was some place in France where it was like a gold encrusted steak.
What? Why would you? What?
It was sold, right? You could buy it.
Was it like dry aged or?
Yes, you could buy this thing for like $1,000 for like a 36-ounce porterhouse.
I don't know if that does more a disservice to the steak or to the gold.
I don't know. I mean, what is it going to like metastasize in my stomach so that when I excrete that later on, it's going to be a solid gold nug?
Oh, like the golden goose that lays the golden eggs. Maybe that's what
the golden person who lays the golden
or poop? Pees the golden.
Defecation.
Maybe they got a little pan. You know how they filter for gold? They hold it over their pee and they try to filter.
We've lost.
I feel like that would hurt.
Be like passing a kidney stone.
Like kidney stones. Maybe that's what they're thinking. They're like, I'm gonna get it this time.
Oh, I've done that once. Not pleasant.
Was it gold?
No.
How do you know? You didn't even. Did you? You should.
I mean, I assumed it was, and I don't think that I can compress calcium into gold.
We've gone way too far.
Is that the positive note?
That should be.
On the comedy?
That was well.
Okay, we gave you guys a comedy sketch.
You're welcome. Free of charge.
Bling. Nike check.
So hey guys, those that are watching, be sure to comment, give us a like, give us some feedback if you will, right? I mean we encourage that.
If you think we did a good job, go ahead and just copy the URL, throw it out on the social links.
If you think
right?
you did a
throw it on your
horrible
Facebook,
job.
Twitter. if you think we did a horrible job, copy that link.
Still do the same thing.
Throw that up there and be like, these guys suck.
They're so horrible.
And then maybe other people come and comment about how much we suck.
We'll take that. I'm okay with that, though.
We'll take it.
Yeah, we will.
If we're good, we're good. If we're not,
let it ride.
We still got time. World's not ending just yet.
That's what you think. Omicron, bud.
Positive
he's
thoughts.
on the way. Omicron he's on the way. Mild symptoms. Cold
if I get a cold, I'm definitely calling in for 2 weeks.
I got the sniffles.
Definitely got to be Omicron.
Well, that should be good, right?
I think we've hit it.
All right. Yeah, you guys have a wonderful evening. Hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you guys next week.
Enjoy the upcoming holidays, and we'll see you next week, guys. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Miles.
And if you know, you know.
And if you don't, you should probably wear a mask.
Ooh, spicy.
Bye, guys.
Bye.